my first question is, go back to being a child in Chicago. What was the dream like? What are you dreaming as a child? And now at the end of this, how far did it go?
Well, I spoke to a few people in restaurants, and thanks for having me, first of all. But last night I spoke to Giuseppe. We're just Joe, right there. So we talked about very similar upbringings. Our parents both born overseas, his Italy, mine Greece. So I was born into the restaurant business, no choice. And I'm glad I got out of it at some point, quite honestly. It was tough growing up. But I'm born in Chicago. A lot of people too, obviously, last night, not into hockey. A few of them mentioned that too. So a little bit of background. Grew up in Chicago, South Side. White Sox fan. I think this went off on me. Cubs fan. You guys can hear me anyway, right? White Sox fan, Cubs fan, but White Sox when it comes down to it when they play each other. But again, with Greek parents, I've known nothing but the restaurant business. I started working, stacking bottles when I was 5 years old in the basement, gradually working up to a coat boy and then short order cook, but just a laborer. And I was talking to Joe about, I never had the brains. I could never run a company now, especially with the technology and social media and what it really does take now. I could use you for my tequila company. We'll get to that at some point. But for me, the biggest thing that my parents instilled was hard work. And doesn't matter what you're doing, what business you're in, whether it's sports, business, or any field. My father was a real hardworking guy, probably worked 70, 80 hours a week. Really didn't spend a whole lot of time, with the kids as far as their activities, whether it's school plays or sports or anything. But the work ethic was instilled at a young age for me. And eventually, it wasn't a dream to play hockey. I just played it because I loved it. But it worked out for me. I worked hard. A lot of people work hard, never get the right break. And then when they do get that breaker opportunity, you don't make the most of it. And I've had, faced some adversity throughout my, childhood at 16, 17, being cut from teams. And, but again, there was no disappointment really, because I had my dream wasn't to play hockey. My parents' goal for me was to just go to college. That's it. Get a scholarship, be the first one in our family out of all my cousins, relatives, to get a college degree. So that's all I had in my mind. And when I was out of hockey at 16, 17, graduated from high school, I was going to get into business and try and figure it out then. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to just get that degree. And because of the restaurant business, I figured business degree would have been the way to go. But things turned out, met a guy on a beach. It's a crazy story. He gave me a phone number, and the rest was history. And ended up, going to University of Wisconsin, not getting my degree because I was pulled out early to be on the Olympic team. And there's no chance of going back. It was tough back then to go back and get a degree at that point after being out of school for 4 years. But that's kind of what I instilled in my kids. And again, with hard work and effort, you put enough time into it, you're going to be successful. That's the way I look at it. And you need people to help you for sure. You got to surround your people with the right people around you. For me, it was coaches, teammates, parents, giving me good advice. Sometimes I did learn not what to do because of my dad, that's for sure, because he was a little bit nuts. Being from this village, they had a reputation of being nuts. It's called the Tsipiana. My mom's side was perfect. They were from a nice town in Greece, Kalamata. But my dad's side, for whatever reason, they I don't want to say this, but there could be some incest going on about 600 years ago. And you just look at their eyes. They all had the same eyes in this village. Thank God I didn't get those eyes. My cousins did. But again, learning, whether it was work or being a parent, my dad taught me, he didn't know he was teaching this, but, to do some of the things he did do, I swore I'd never do. And it helped me as a hockey player, helped me as a businessman, helped me as a parent. So, but again, it was a long journey. And what happened to me since I turned pro, that's only dreams are made of. And to be able to do something for a living that you love, and I'm sure most of you found a passion for what you're doing. For me, that was the key. I played hockey because I loved it, and I'd still be playing now. if I could, if it wasn't for physical part of it. But I was lucky enough to do something for a living that I loved, and that's for me really important. And I have kids that all graduated from college, Michigan State, Northwestern, and 2 of them have found what they love, and 2 of them are still searching for it. But they've got that option now because of that degree. So, but like I said, that was my goal in life, and I wasn't very successful in the restaurant business as far as the business end of it. Thank God I had Mom cooking the books for about 35, 40 years, so that helped a ton. You guys might not know about that part. That was a 60s, 70s thing. But yeah, so I was fortunate enough to have them help me in the businesses once I did open some businesses in Detroit. And I obviously bought a block in Chicago, and I've been really fortunate with real estate, believe it or not. Just blind luck, because I knew they were building that United Center downtown before anybody else did, and I bought a block. So every time I opened a restaurant, I made sure I bought the real estate, just in case I'd screw up in the business or it wasn't going well. I had that to fall back on. So that's been probably the best thing I've ever done. And my father tried to get in real estate, just never had any luck, but it ended up turning out really well for me and my family. So I guess that's in short. That's
Good answer.
all right.
What? I don't need that.
Yeah, okay.
You don't. Do you want whatever?
I don't think it's working, but
So what I hear out of your story is that the widget ended up being hockey, but it was more that your parents instilled hard work and work ethic in you. So did the widget matter? I mean, obviously you had to fall in love with hockey, but did it matter? Like, did they raise you with work ethic, and maybe that's the secret of success?
yeah, I mean, and the work ethic for the restaurant part, I worked hard in the restaurant, but I who likes to clean, wash dishes and clean the deep fries and scrub the grills with those things. I got burn marks still from those days. The hockey part was easy. Every athlete wants to be a musician, and every musician wants to be an athlete. It's just funny how that works out. So I played 5 instruments from the age of 5 to about 14 and decided that I was horrible at every one of them. So that's why I had to go to sports. And, my first love was baseball. And I quite honestly, I was a really good baseball player growing up here in Chicago, and I rivaled another kid called Donnie Paul. I was a pitcher, and ultimately my dad ended that career, but it worked out for me, thank God. But I did love baseball. And again, hockey, I moved to San Diego when I was 16, and there was no hockey out there. There's hardly any Americans in the NHL. Again, it was just a thing that I loved doing in my pastime. And, never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to make it to the NHL or even college out of San Diego the way I did. So again, I made the most out of my opportunity, and it could have gone totally the opposite way when I did get my chance to try out for the University of Wisconsin and get that scholarship. So, but timing's everything. Getting the right coach, that likes you. You get the wrong guy, he could bury you, and that's just the way it is in any business. So I from going all bad till I was about 17 as far as sports. 18 on, I like greatest coaches in the history of the game. Badger Bob, I don't know if you're familiar, one of the greatest college hockey coaches. He was my first coach at Wisconsin. Jeff Sauer, both have passed since then, but I was just lucky they liked me, and I think because of the hard work, had a lot to do with it. And my relationship with my teammates, how I got along and I had a lot of respect. That was kind of my MO as a pro player, was being my leadership and how I got along with my teammates. Didn't matter if they were superstars or just role guys. I treated everybody the same, and karma's for me it was great. So it rewarded me.
Do you ever get to pause and reflect back at? Obviously, it goes fast, but the fact that you've lived out the dream of so many human beings, like, can you pause and say, "I did it"?
Well, I think I proved it by playing until I was 48, because I knew the day would come that I was going to have to retire. So I didn't take a day for granted. There was nothing I didn't like about playing hockey. I don't care if it was a travel. The only downside is missing your kids, because you travel so much. But I made up for that in the summers by taking them, as far away as I could and spending that 2.5, 3 months we had off. The Hall of Fame hit home. I thought I opened up my speech with, this is kind of a joke that this ever happened. And then last week, maybe a week and a half ago, I don't know if you guys had heard, but they announced they're retiring my jersey. And from being a hometown guy, that's the ultimate honor, I think, and just like, again, lucky that they're going to do that. My mom's still alive to see it. So yeah, what I did, I played longer than anybody except Gordie Howe, which is crazy. Longest American. So yeah, I do look back. I haven't slept good for the last week and a half because of the jersey retirement, because everything's flying through my head. My biggest fear is a speech that night, quite honestly. But I know it's going to be special because we had the Hall of Fame in Canada, and I had 100 of my closest friends up there. It's tough to get up there, but this is going to be totally different. I'll have every single person that had anything to do with my upbringing and hockey, and teachers, and they'll be at the United Center that night, and the party the night before should be a party to remember. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world.
I hear you use the term "we." Like, you really do reflect when you're reflecting backwards. You're saying there's a team of people there that supported you along the way. How do you change from "I" to "we"?
Well, hockey, you change the "we" or you're going to get your ass kicked. That's still part of the part of the game. No one really gets outside. You can't do that in the regular business world, at least not anymore. But we hold each other accountable, and everybody pulls the rope the same way. And if the coach doesn't do it, that's in the room. That's on the captain. I wasn't a natural born leader, but having guys, Bob Gainey from Montreal, I played 1983 was my first year, and Bob Gainey, arguably one of the best captains in the history of the game. I was lucky enough to learn from him, and I always said breaking in with Montreal was like getting a Harvard degree. You just shut up, you watch, you listen, and that's how you learn. So I look at guys like Eddie Olchuk, you guys from Chicago. He's a hometown kid, but he never had that leadership. So that probably killed him, coming to Chicago at the age 18, 19, and he wasn't fortunate enough to have that start. And had he started with another team with some veteran leadership, he probably would have had a different career. Not that Eddie had a bad career, but he could have been a superstar that everybody kind of thought he was going to be. And then going to Detroit, fast forward, Steve Yzerman, again, he wasn't a natural born leader, and he had nobody to help him his first, 15 years, I don't think 14 years. And then came Scotty Bowman, and he set him straight and taught him how to be a team guy. And he was a perfect example, Steve Yzerman. He became the ultimate captain, and he had a rep initially as a pretty selfish guy, and the team never had success. But it took one coach to put him in his place. And again, Izzy listened. And there's something to be said for that. I don't listen to everybody, but I'd like to think, I've got pretty good judgment. And like I said, really lucky to have the coach. Kenny Holland's another guy, one of the managers I've ever, worked under. So again, surrounded by so many great people.
Another thing I just there is Yzerman took 15 years before he had the wake-up call. How hard, you're young, you're thrown into this league, you've got fame and money and everybody cheering for you. Does it just take time to mature, and that's part of the challenge of being a professional athlete?
Part of it is, but you still got people to show you. I think for me, Izzy is a second pick overall, high expectation, needs to put on. A little bit when you're a defenseman and a guy from Chicago that really had no business being where he is. So I think, not that Izzy didn't appreciate it more, but he just didn't, points weren't as important as wins. And I learned that later in my career when I was with Chicago at the end when things weren't going well. I thought it was better to go to a team and win and play less than, end up burying myself in Chicago playing more and not having team success. So I saw the writing on the wall pretty quick, and rather than jeopardize the respect that I had for my teammates and the city of Chicago and the organization, I got out of Dodge as quick as I could when I thought things were going south, and it worked out for me in Detroit. Could have been a disaster because I got booed out of Chicago, in the rink, out of the rink. I couldn't even walk the streets for a good 5-6 years with my family, getting heckled and yelled at. And it's embarrassing when you're getting in street fights with your dad and your sister and against people yelling at you at the age of 39. It's pretty bad. But yeah, it's just like I said, Scotty Bowman, again, you have to listen to what Scotty Bowman said. He the ultimate coach, he'll go down as the greatest in history as coaches.
Can you go back to being 16 and being cut and what that felt like, and then reflecting back and telling the 16-year-old Chelly that this is not the end of the story?
Yeah, well, because of my dad's mishaps in the restaurant business, we were forced to leave Chicago at the age of, I was at 16, and we went out to California, and I went from an all-boys Catholic school here getting whipped and paddled, and, it was brutal. I won't get into it, but I get to San Diego, and I'm on a campus eating lunch outside in San Diego and Mira Mesa, 2,000 students, girls everywhere. And I met these two guys, surfers, and once I started surfing, I totally forgot about hockey. I was just lucky there was a rink by my house in San Diego that I kept skating in the beer and pizza league, you call it, senior leagues. And I skated a lot, but when I tried out for the team up in Canada, I tried out for 3 teams from Quebec to Ontario, taking a bus all the way. And I'd left high school at that point. I missed about a month and a half of high school. And after being cut, I went back, and again, it's not like I was devastated. I just went right back to surfing, caught up on high school. Next year, I got the same opportunity. Someone offered me a tryout up in Canada. This time I made it, and that's when everything went for the better. So because of I didn't have those expectations, I don't think that the adversity, it didn't hit home as much that I was not playing hockey anymore. I was actually, out of hockey for about 4 months. And it didn't bother me one bit. Again, what I had mentioned, the goal was to get a business degree. So I started going to University of, it's called United States International University down in San Diego. And that was it. Like I just was going to get my, my degree and learn how to be a great surfer. That's all I cared about at that point. So it was bizarre, really.
Confidence. How much does confidence play into success? And at what point did your confidence switch into, you got it?
It started when I went up to Canada that second time, and I was small. I grew 2 years. I grew 2 inches when I was 18, 19. So that was really the biggest break I got. But I went up to this. I was the only American in the league. I played for a team called Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Anybody know where Moose Jaw is? There you go. 1 person, 2 people. So somehow I ended up in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. I met this kid in San Diego, and I'm playing against these guys that look like men. I don't even shave yet. They got mustaches, they got beards, and I'm terrified. So I came into the first couple of games with no confidence. And then, a couple things went right in the game. And then, I scored a goal in the first shift of the third game. But the coach walks down to me and he says, "Hey, listen, you're the only American in the league. Do you know how to fight?" I said, "I've never been in a fight in my life, especially on the ice." And he goes, "What you got if you're going to play in this league?" So what do? I go out first thing, pick a guy, and I pick the wrong guy. So I get mine. And his name was Garth Butcher. He was actually a 15-year-old in the league. Ended up playing pro for a long time as a fighter. But after I got beat up, I was this dumb. The minute I got out of the penalty box, I went right after him again and did a little better. So I learned how to fight so I built up my confidence. And then in the meantime, I started working on my skills, to be an offensive defenseman. And quite honestly, I played forward my whole life. But when they asked me what position I played, the coach, we were talking on the phone, I said, "What do you need?" He says, "We need defensemen." I said, "I play defense." So that's kind of the crazy thing. So I had to kind of learn on the fly how to play defense while I was in Moose Jaw. But then I came up with a solution. If I have the puck, I don't have to worry about defense. So that was my, bread and butter. I had good legs, and that was my advantage over everybody. For whatever reason, I was always the fastest kid, running growing up, and one of the fastest skating. So, and then when things started going right, that confidence just kept, getting better. When they named me, to go to University of Wisconsin, I just all of a sudden now it's a reality that I could make, at least get a scholarship, and then I made the Olympic team. Never thought that was going to even be an option. And then once you get on that Olympic team, you're one step away from making the NHL, and that's when it hit home, and that's where I kind of got my confidence. Once I turned pro, though, it was the same thing. It was right back to when I was 18. I was scared. My first 13 games, I was getting ready to go down to the minors. I scored 1 goal in the playoffs, and all of a sudden I thought I was Bobby Orr, and the rest was history. And it was crazy how it was just a switch, and it went from just throwing the puck away and panicking to 1 goal, and all of a sudden I had all this composure, and I was back to where I was in college and junior, just thinking I could dominate and I could not be one of the best, but at least play in this league.
What's your family saying the whole time that you're going on this adventure? What's your dad saying?
My dad said, I worked long enough. You're working now. So he retired. He actually retired. And anytime he had a chance to go on the trips, he'd make the trips. Mom, not so much. She didn't get to travel a lot. But he was the only dad. My dad was a loud, obnoxious Greek. He really was, and he was a good time. He loved to party, and everybody loved him. That was part of the bar business. He was great at socializing with people. So he was the only parent they actually let on our private charter in the playoffs. So that was part of the deal when I was in Montreal in '83. That he was the only dad on the planes traveling. And the first year, of course, we win the cup. So everybody wants him on the planes. He's the good luck guy, right? So, and he just embarrassed me on the plane. He'd be playing cards with all these great guys, and he's a bit of a gambler. But some of the things they've gone to All-Star games, like that's All-Star games, the Hall of Fame, those types of things are great. The awards, those are the things where, that's where I got the satisfaction seeing how happy they were and my friends were to be able to taking part of that, because they feel like it's part of theirs, and they should, just as the fans do, because they are a big part of it.
When you're out there on the ice and you look up and see your dad somewhere, that take your game to a different level?
No, it made things worse. So my dad was not allowed in the lower level, along with my uncles, and even my wife and kid at some point. The kids were down there for warm-up, you pound on the glass, make them laugh, give them a puck. But I'll give you a good example of what kind of dad my dad was. He would steal my tickets that I had left for people for the game. He would just go to will call and take all my tickets. So by the time my friends would get there, they'd have no tickets, and and ultimately the people at will call would just let the people in just because they knew what was going on. So one day I was sitting there and I'm looking at my wife, and she had a couple of the kids were there, and I see them pointing. My dad and my uncle are in a full-out brawl in warm-ups, fighting each other in the crowd, and I'm like, that's it, enough. But he was a brutal. He's that sports parent who was brutal, screaming, yelling at the refs, the umps. Like, he was horrible, and that's one of the things I learned from him not to do when I was, raising my kids. So thanks, Dad, for that. But he was a great dad, like real loving, just nuts. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, my mom always said he was a good time. So.
What do you think about when you think about him when you're getting the jersey retired?
I wish he was there, but I'm lucky enough. My mom's here. He saw the Hall of Fame. Same, like I said, if he is watching down, like he always reminds his name first, so that'll be his. So good enough. My mom, she's 90 and she's having a go now, but she seems to match Allie whenever like my son, my daughter. So somehow I'm sure she's going to manage to get to that. It's going to be special. And she was there the other night, and she was hurting. She'd been having a month, but somehow she makes it to a Pearl Jam concert. Front row in a wheelchair with Mike McCready like playing right in front of her on the floor, and she's rocking. It was her first Pearl Jam concert, so that part of it's it's unbelievable.
When the announcement happened at the Pearl Jam concert, what was your mom's face?
I couldn't see it. I was like, honestly, I was in shock. She was about from here to that wall, but Eddie was pointing. But at that point, I quite honestly blacked out. I'll just go. I'll tell the quick version. Tuesday night, they put me on stage. And Eddie, if you're familiar with Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, he has a tendency when we go on these solo trips to try and embarrass me by putting me in these costumes and handing me a guitar, while he's on stage. So this Tuesday night, he put me in Evel Knievel outfit with a helmet. So I'm like, I'm not going to pass it up because it does make for great pictures, like afterwards. So as I'm leaving the stage, I know Pearl Jam's not about that. They're all about the music. They don't put their friends on stage. Very seldom will they honor anybody. I know they tried to put Dennis Rodman on there when they had won the champ, and Dennis wouldn't get off the stage. So they had to have a big meeting that no longer is Dennis Rodman allowed backstage. So anyway, as I'm leaving the stage Tuesday night, Matt Cameron, the drummer, came up to me and, he shakes my hand and he says, "Hey, great job. Get the F off the stage right now." And I went, "Oh, Jesus Christ." So Thursday night, when we were supposed to be doing a tribute to Rocky Wirtz, obviously Rocky passed away a few months ago, and it was my idea, but in hindsight, my daughter flying into town from California, Eddie lying to me, said he never even heard of Mr. Wirtz. They played it off so perfect that I literally had no idea. I thought I was just going on stage to wear Rocky's jersey, get a little tribute to him, dedicate a song to him. So I did that. As I started walking away, Eddie had to grab me. And then he had to take the mic off and say, hey, stay here for a second. So then he kind of moves me around to see the monitor. He goes, and he kept putting the mic away so no one could hear in the crowd. And he said, just take 5 feet and look. So I started looking up. I go, Jesus Christ, they're going to show highlights of me now. So now I just want off. And he starts pointing, to my mom, my sisters, and my brother. But I still don't know what's going on. It was literally a blackout on stage because all I'm thinking is get off the stage. Matt Cameron wants you off the stage. So until they, showed the video of them dropping the banner, and it just absolutely blew me away. And I'm hard to fool. Like I could tell when my wife's lying most of the time, and my daughter, but they pulled a good one on me. For 2 months, they'd known about it and planned it. I had no idea. So pretty special to have them do it because they've been a part of my life since 94, 95, meaning Pearl Jam. So I'll never forget that one.
All right, switch gears over to business. You make a little bit of money in the NHL. At what point do you get sound advice that is now grow your wealth? And you got into business, you've made really smart investments. At what point do you understand that you need to make your money work better for you?
Well, that's where my wife Tracy comes in. She worked for Merrill Lynch. She's an investor. You talk about chemistry, it couldn't have gone any better. So quite honestly, she still to this day, 6-7 hours in the office, whether she's enabling the kids for their health insurance or they're paying their phones or whatever. And I feel bad she buried herself because I never trusted anybody, quite honestly, to invest in real estate. Everything I did was on my own. Just again, lucky, I guess. At some point, you got to have a little luck too. But do her thing. And quite honestly, it's ignorant, but I don't want to know. I don't want to know when the market crashed in 2006 how much I lost. It's better for me, trust me, because I just less sleep for me, and she's built for that. She's calm. I'm not. So I'd love to answer that question and you got to be with the right group too. And now, fortunately, my son-in-law is working for Morgan Stanley, and that's where all the money's going now. So he's a kid who went to Northwestern. He played 6 years of NFL. His name's Danny Vitale, and my daughter married him. They both went to Northwestern together. So again, just fortunate enough that I had my mom in the restaurants to do all the accounting and the bookwork. Now, my wife Tracy, along with whether it was J.P. Morgan or Morgan Stanley, had the right people. Just a little bit of luck, but had the right people.
You opened the chili restaurant. Do you call that a success as you reflect backwards? Was that a win for you?
For the good times, yeah. Financially, I don't know, but no, like I said, and I had the real estate to fall back on. So it was kind of a win-win situation. And then in Chicago, we had some great teams, went to the finals. I had that bar right on Madison Street. I owned basically the whole block. And it was a great way to be approachable from the fans. And all the players went there. Michael Jordan would come in there. It was just a great spot, a blue-collar bar, sports bar. And then Detroit to win 2 cups and have the bar. The cup was in the bar. I started turning it down. The cup guys, our parties were better than anybody's. So the guys that march around the Stanley Cup to protect it, they were calling me, asking me if I wanted the cup. And, after 15 times, I'm going, that's enough, you guys. I'm sick of the cup. So, but the question there, a lot of employed, 60 or 70 people in Detroit. And again, the great relationships with a lot of people, and it was just a stepping stone for a lot of these college kids, and to give them good recommendations to follow their careers. So that part was pretty. I didn't really realize that in the beginning, how much I helped all these kids in Detroit. Not so much Chicago, because my family basically ran that one, but Detroit, we had a lot of kids that went on to do some great things after they'd worked for us.
Did the money ever motivate you?
No.
It doesn't sound like it does.
Never has. It's never probably should have been. I had a lot more money, but I don't know if that. But again, I'm glad I'm not motivated by that, quite honestly. And my business skills aren't great, quite honestly. The business part of it, as far as being out in public and being at my restaurants. So I think that was the most important thing, that I was in my restaurants. I was having beers with everybody. I just myself approachable to everybody, and it does go a long way. On any business, if you're not hands-on, 90% of the time, it's not going to work. It really won't. You have to show you care, and that'll get your employees to care more too.
What motivated you then?
Ah,
What motivates you today?
I like working for sure. I mean, I like keeping busy. If it's not, chasing the grandkids around or, we're lucky enough. Chicago is such a great sports town. You can go to a sporting event almost every night. It's summertime. There's no better place to be in the summers with the lake on the boat and all the music festivals. But my dad was the same way. He never missed a beat, never missed anything. Even when he was 84, he was still trying to get to everything, including my son's games. Like even if he couldn't get around, somehow managed to get there. So I get bored quick. I don't sit around well. So I guess that's what it is. I just love. I take everything. I appreciate everything that I've been given, and because of hockey, I have the opportunity to do a lot of special things and go a lot of places.
Still dream? Do you have dreams of things that you want to do?
Not really. Be a grandfather, a good grandfather. I keep having this crazy notion of being the mayor of Chicago, but I hate politics. So maybe I'll be like the ambassador of sports or minister of sports. I'm going to meet with the mayor and his guy next week. So I want to get involved just to get, because I love the city so much, and I hate to see what's happening right now. Primarily just a safety thing. That's all my biggest concern is. I don't care about the taxing or. You want to think the money goes where it's supposed to, but I hate politics. It's divisive, but you got to care, and it's my city, and I plan on living downtown for the rest of my life. So if I could help, I'd like to, but pretty content with the way things are right now.
What do your kids see you as? Do they see you as a former hockey player?
No.
Just dad?
No, I think just dad. And again, we go somewhere. Being on my boat's a perfect example. I cannot help cleaning. If there's a piece of paper somewhere on the floor, anywhere in here, I'm going to pick it up. If I go into bathrooms, anywhere, I'm putting my foot in the garbage if it's full, just to make sure it goes down so no one's throwing it on the floor. So I got OCD when it comes. It drives my kids crazy because they don't have it, and they're slobs, and they don't. The garbage is full, take it out. If the water jug's empty, fill it, get the other one. But they don't get it, so that frustrates me a lot, quite honestly. But it's my problem. It's not theirs.
So on the kid front, did they ever look at you and say, I want to follow dad in business somewhat, or dad in hockey somewhat? Like, did they latch on to your successes and want to follow in your footprints? And at what point did you recognize it?
Well, one thing I will say, no one plays till they're 48 years old. So my kids were old enough to live it and remember it. Like my sons, I think when I was in Detroit, 12, 10, girls were, 8 and 6. So they were on the ice for the cups. They remember everything. So that, for an athlete, that's pretty special, because a lot of guys, their kids are really young when they win. They'll never remember if they're 3, 5 years old. So I guess that probably is the most special thing for them, for the experiences. They've been to 4 Olympics, all of them, which is, that's amazing. And then remember some great Italy. They got to go to Italy, the Utah when we played Canada in the gold medal game. So these are things they'll never forget. So and not too many kids have that opportunity. Being athletes themselves, the boys played hockey at Michigan State, the girls played lacrosse at Northwestern together, which was real lucky. Made it easy on the parents driving, that's for sure, because that could have been a pain in the ass if they decided to go to different colleges. But so in that sense, yeah, it was pretty special that they remember it and loved it for sure.
Everybody, if they reflect back on their career, they can find these pinpoint moments where it's like, that was one that I just store in my brain and don't let go. Did that happen with the Olympics? Was that one of them for you?
Well, the one good thing about the Olympics is there is second and third place. But, the silver medal, that's the thing you look back and say, well, you're lucky enough you won a silver medal. If you go back in the history of the Olympics, you see the other athletes really go crazy when they win a bronze. But hockey's just a different story because of the Stanley Cup. Second place, it means nothing. But Utah, as big as a disappointment as it was probably the greatest hockey I've ever been involved with in that gold medal game. And leading up to that against Russia, those 2 games. Stanley Cups, neither of them more important than the other, just different. Montreal, I was young, single. was my second year in the league, the parade in Montreal. There's not a better place to win it. Over 1 million people on the streets and celebrating, and then to win it 17 years later with my kids, sitting with us in the car in the motorcade. And so I've experienced everything. I've played in every league from the U-Haul, they call it, so the worst of the worst. So there's not a thing I haven't really done throughout my career as far as playing in Europe and the leagues and college route, junior route. And my kids basically did the same thing I did. So they must have, some kids will rebel against their dad. These guys did exactly what, I did. So in a way, I guess they learned and listened.
Those are some of the moments that you hold on to, though, right? You look back and you can reflect back on how you felt in those moments, and it stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and like I said, the most gratifying is sharing it with my family and friends. Like I said, this thing coming up in February it's going to be off the hook, and I'm looking at this as my last one, so I'm going to make this a humdinger. I'll call it that. It should be one of the great, and the fact that I'm from Chicago, I'm still not quite sure, but my childhood hero, or at least one of them, was Dick Butkus. Just the most vicious guy from the South Side, so why would you love him? And eventually I got to know him because he happened to move out to Malibu, 40 years ago. And ironically enough, we might be the only two Chicago natives to have our jerseys retired in their hometown. I'm still not quite sure if that's true, but no one's had an answer for me yet, if there's anybody else that's done it.
How did you take the losses?
Worst loss it wasn't so bad in Salt Lake as it was when we lost to Pittsburgh in 91-92, getting swept. Because I talked about being the mayor. Had I won the cup in 91-92, I felt like I could have been the mayor of Chicago, because they never forget. It's similar to what Messier did in New York. Like, he walks around New York like he's the king of New York, and he hasn't even been involved with the team since 94 or whatever it was when they won. So that was the most disappointing. I had a run off the ice. I ran literally off the ice, and I won't tell you, I went and hid somewhere to cry that one out. But that was without a doubt the most disappointing low light in my career. But you can't have everything. I was lucky enough to win 3 cups. You got guys like Ray Bourque, played their whole career in Boston, had to go to Colorado to win. And other players too that play their whole life, and even you look at Profo, Jim Kelly, who had that amazing year, loses 4 times in the Super Bowl, and so you're lucky. It's hard to win that cup. It's probably the hardest championship to win because of the grind and the wear and tear on you. So I won that first one my second year. I said, Jesus Christ, I end up with 10 cups before I'm done. But it wasn't, 17 years later, what a drought that was. And losing in the final really does hurt. I don't care what anybody says, that they'd rather lose in the first round. Every round it gets better and better, and the whole country's watching. And as bad as it was losing in the final, it's still an accomplishment to get into the finals.
What does life feel like when you can't walk down a street in Chicago?
Well, at least they're nice now. Jesus Christ, it was horrible. I loved going to Cubs and Sox game, and I got mother effed more than anybody in the universe for about 7 years. And it took the Blackhawks, actually, when they won their first cup, it was like totally they forgot about me. It was like, oh, and it just like a switch, it turned, and I was welcomed back. And I was gone for 20 years, basically, once I got traded from here to Detroit. It was 10 years as a player and 10 years in management. And then my dad passed. I came back to take care of Mom, and it was just a totally different vibe for me. And everybody's friendly. And those Southsiders, I don't know, there's a few guys from they're barbaric and vicious. So I still won't go out in the bleachers at White Sox Park, because they see, I don't know what it is, the dark skin or whatever, they come after me. Like, it's a crazy thing. And but again, like, there are not too many guys that can pull it off. And now Patrick Kane, I think he's contemplating maybe, Chicago or Detroit might be one of those teams. And I'm not going to give him advice, but like I said, I got lucky and made it through that, because it could have been an absolute disaster not being welcome back to Chicago. And then if I hadn't won the Cups of Detroit, they hated me forever in Detroit, right? And there were some cities where I couldn't leave the hotel, because if I went to a bar, someone's going to go after you. And that's just because of the type of player I was, going after Fedorov and going after Yzerman. Someone wanted to kill me because of that.
Was it hard coming back here the first time in another uniform and playing against the team that you grew up loving? When
my first game back with Detroit to Chicago, After the second period, Scotty Bowman came up to me on the bench after the period just then. He goes, "Hey, you're keeping the crowd in this game. Go take your stuff off and go drink with your buddy." Well, Michael Jordan had come to the game, and he just wanted to do it to whatever. He wanted to use my friend, and he thought that I was wrong by being traded. Well, I'll be damned. Scotty Bowman was serious. He made me take off my equipment, and I got to go up in the suite for the third period. The crowd booed me so much every time I got on the ice, every time I touched the puck, that Bowman just wanted me out of the dressing room. So he put me up in the suite. I drank for the third period with Michael Jordan and all my friends, and that was the worst welcoming ever. And the next one was when they honored me when Detroit was in town and booed me so much they couldn't hear my speech anymore. So I just crumbled up the speech, threw it down. My daughter's bawling her eyes out. 10 feet behind me, just walked out of there and said, "That's it. I'm not coming back." So
It's gonna be tough. I mean, like the emotional side of just going through it. I mean, it's just, you're a likable guy. It can't feel good to go through something like that.
thank God for thick skin. I'm not a thinker, and I felt bad for my kids. My mom was a little upset too. They just couldn't understand why they'd boo a Chicago native and for what I did for the 8 years I played here. But again, forgive and forget. And I guess the last thing I said during the speech before I got pissed off and crumbled it up was, "Let bygones be bygones." I started yelling at the crowd actually, and thank God I didn't get carried away. But Roenick was laughing behind me, so I just took the mic and threw it to him. So it was a funny moment now that I look back, but it wasn't funny at the time.
I mean, if you go through your life lessons, I mean, take this last one in business or real estate or whatever. You let it brush off, like you don't let it stick with you too long. Seems like you're respecting the moments. You're not overthinking how life works. You're very committed to just living your best life. Is there anything else that if you're trying to advise people on how to look at this crazy thing that we're in?
I mean, in sports, I guess especially, maybe not just sports, in life too. You have a bad day, you got to put it behind you, and look forward to the next day. You have a bad game, you can't let it carry over. So if you have that ability to put that in the back burner, and even when something bad happens during a game, for the next shift, it could affect you. And you talked about confidence earlier, and that goes in the business world, it goes in anything. If someone tells you you're ugly, they're going to start believing after a while. They keep telling you. So you got to be strong. Obviously that's not the case for everybody, or you have to have a good support team to help you through those tough times. So that's the adversity, and I just had enough people to support me over the years. And some people don't survive that. Some people they crumble under pressure or facing adversity. So it's something you can learn for sure, but you got to have help, and whether it's your family, your coworkers, you can't do it alone. There's no question. So I did have that gift of being able to put things behind me. A perfect example that you saw just recently, Mike Babcock. He had to step down for something stupid, but I'm not going to let him ruin my day today. He's ruined a few of them, but I think for me, I played for him for 7 years, and as my parent told me, don't ask me why, just say okay. So my dad told me to do something, my reply was okay, and it was the same for any boss I had, any coach I had. So I took that to heart. So I survived. Day one, he wanted me to go, but they couldn't. He come up with a reason to get rid of me. So you got to take some of that, and that's all part of it too. And you just get stronger from that, and I did.
I want to close with the end of career one and into whatever's next. There's a lot of businesses will go through a moment where they're exiting their business. They're selling off their baby. When did you know it was time, and what did you feel like to make the decision that part of your life, the professional hockey player, was going to be sunset?
And I told everybody, I think when I was 43, 44, then you start finding out that you're an inspiration to older people, not necessarily players, but fans. Like I had people coming up to me, "That's great. I still play in the senior leagues. That's unbelievable. You're 45 years old and still." So then I said, okay, man, I got to keep working, and like they're proud of the fact that I'm American, and I'm playing at this age and a pretty high level too. So that was a big part of it also for the longevity. And then I'm getting it lost in translation here a little bit. Please repeat.
It's the end of the.
Oh, okay. So it finally, I always said I'm going to play until there's nothing left in the tank. People always say you got to go out on top. Well, that's garbage. How can you quit when you win and then you still got something left? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. So my mentality was I'm playing till there's nothing left in the tank as long as I don't embarrass myself or jeopardize the success of the team. So I slowly became a mentor for the young defenseman coming up, which was a great role. We had a kid from Chicago, Brett Lebda. So as opposed to becoming an offensive defenseman, and I was just a stay-home guy, and I was there to babysit whoever it was, Yuri Fisher, Brett Lebda, a couple other guys in the last few years at Detroit. When I finally realized that I was playing in the minors to the Chicago Wolves, and the only reason I went to the minors is because it was in Chicago. My son was playing junior Chicago, and my parents went to every game my last year of my career. Then they called me up to Atlanta for the playoffs after the Olympics. I was coaching, and I showed up in terrible shape. I went to Vancouver to the Olympics. I was on the coaching staff, and all I did was drink for 2 weeks with the coaches. Didn't do anything else but drink. Got back to Chicago, and they called me up to Atlanta. So as I'm sitting on the bench and I'm playing 8 to 10 minutes a game, I'm thinking to myself, now this isn't worth being away from your family. And that was, I just remember looking up at the clock and deciding this is it. I'm going to play the last 7 games, and that's when I knew. It was just, and that's when most guys retire, right? When they have to uproot their family, you don't. I was taken out of school at 15, 16, and I hated it. I wasn't going to do the same thing to my kids. I wanted them to finish their high school and then go off to college. And that moment, I'll never forget looking up at the clock in Atlanta and just saying, I'm done, which I never thought. And then I had a crazy daughter who was like me, and my wife was begging me for her senior year to retire. And I said, okay, I got this one. So I got her good her senior year.
Chris Chelios, thanks so much.
No, thank you for having me, you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Any questions from anyone else? Now your chance.
I was thinking maybe the best moment of your career and like the toughest moment of your career.
Again, toughest was probably that loss in Chicago to Pittsburgh, the way it happened, getting swept, because we were on a roll. They'd won 11 games in a row in the playoffs, broke a record. We won 11 games in a row, broke the record. So it was just devastating the way it happened. There are actually good ways to lose, and that wasn't one of them. Highlight, I think I got the cup in Detroit because all 4 of my kids were on the ice with me, and they started that thing with the wives and the families a few years before that, which was never the case, and the Stanley Cup parties. One really comes to memory in Malibu. We had everybody from Sylvester Stallone to the guy Meathead on the whatever Archie Bunker show. It's right when social media kind of hit. So we had the cup on the beach, and there had to be over 1,000 people over the course of the day. We just put it in a chair, and I just sat on my deck with my family going, "You believe that? Frickin' Tom Hanks." And so just one after another of these guys coming, and because you could walk on the beach publicly. So, and then the pictures, like this book, our photographer just from Detroit just happened to make the trip. So the pictures are amazing. So when I'm old and I can't get out of my rocking chair, these pictures, I'm gonna have a good smile on my face for that event, and having Kid Rock played on the beach. Like you could talk to the Stanley Cup guys. No one's had a better party than that one. And like I said, the picture says it all. And so that was a real highlight. And tons of friends actually flew out for that weekend. So that was a pretty cool thing. Yep.
What restaurants did you own, and when did you get out? Or are you still owning?
Nothing now. No, I started the tequila business. I know a few of you there last night. We started that a couple of years ago. Restaurants, I'll just go my dad's history. Like I said, I was born into it. So he had some pretty famous places. A Blue Note was one of his best places on the South Side. Kind of Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin type nightclub acts. And then he went into the restaurant business, which was his biggest mistake because he was not good. He was good getting people drunk in bars. In restaurants, he just couldn't deal with cooks and waitresses. He just had a bad temper. And that's not a good thing to have in that business. So for myself personally, the first one was in Chicago on Madison Street at Chelios Chili Bar. And the next one, when I got traded, is basically the same thing. I opened 2 of them in Detroit. one in Dearborn, Michigan, and one was right in the smack middle of the baseball stadium, the football stadium, and the hockey arena. So again, they worked out to be great, but I'll tell you, when the Lions and the Wings and the Hawks and the things started going bad, business got real bad. So I was lucky enough that the real estate was the value in the whole thing. 2 years ago, the worst 3 o'clock in the morning decision I've ever made in my life. And not only because I'm 20 years too old for this tequila thing. I just feel like it's so good. Like, not just my tequila in general, but I've fallen in love. And like everybody else during COVID, unfortunately, the whole world or country, look at the liquor store, look at the liquor industry. And a lot of people haven't recovered from that. And I don't think it's a good thing, but I've got a great partner. His name's Jim Bob Morris. He's from Bloomington, Illinois. And he's very successful in his company. He's packaging, most important one. But the best thing about Jim, he's very generous. He is not in it for the money. He's in it. He donates everything to the Mexican community as far as building soccer fields and education for kids, buying laptops. And his only vice is he loves being the center of attention. He walks in the room with his chest out, and he introduces himself as Jim Bob Morris, Green Bay Packers. Well, he only played 3 games. So Jim Bob got an ego, but he lights up a room, and he would have been a perfect guy to have here to talk to you guys, because as far as business, he gets it, and he's a people person, and he's a very fun guy to be around. And like I said, he travels around. KC is his thing. He went to college in Kansas City, so he's a big Chiefs backer. And Green Bay, his 3 games have made him a cult hero there for some reason. So, and it's been fun. But again, it's not something I've always put all my time into everything I did. I was all in, whether it was hockey, the restaurant business. I can't, being a grandparent now, I don't want to go do tastings at night and 2-hour tequila. I started fake drinking at one point. It sounds sad, but you just can't do it. At 61, it's tough. But we're trying, and I think if we'd have started a little smaller and kept it more local, it might have been easier for me. But we're 17 states, and if you don't have it, this is business, liquor business, or any. It's a pound the pavement thing. You can't. You have to be there and work in the street, and I'm too old.
Do you guys get together with your old teammates, and if so, do you talk about hockey?
Not as much as we'd like to. You keep in touch, long distance relationships, but when you do run into each other, it's like you never missed a beat. The biggest problem, you cram, so you're out till 4 a.m. most of the time, because you don't, when you're going to see them again. And that is the biggest problem. Eddie Vedder is a perfect example. I might see him, 12 days out of the year. So every time I come in town, the band cringes, the manager cringes, because he doesn't know. They ask Eddie if you guys went out, but Eddie doesn't count, going out as sitting in your room and drinking till 4 a.m. That doesn't count. So, to answer your question, we do keep in touch, but again, when I got the job with ESPN the past 2 years, reunited with a lot of guys I hadn't seen. That was probably the coolest part about the job, was being relevant again a little bit. And not that I cared about that, quite honestly, but once I started seeing guys that I'd played with 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and a lot of those guys were scouts or, commentators or somehow involved. It was great to see them, because you lose touch with a lot of guys that your teammates that you weren't, as close with or kept in touch with. So it's pretty cool to still be an ambassador. I get pretty free reign when I'm at the games, other than visiting a few suites. So, I go downstairs and go to the press room, or I go and see a lot of the guys. And it's nice to see the guys and see how well they're doing, and that they're still involved also.
Good. Is there any one fierce competitor that comes to mind as somebody you played against?
He's the devil. They should call him the devil. His name's Dale Hunter. And he was a good player too, but he'd carve your eyes out. He'd put me out twice good, just blatant cheap, hit from behind, blew my knee out. And it didn't matter if you fight him. Even when I fought him, on tape it looks like I won, but it came out looking like I fought a bobcat. He would just start scratching me. So I'd be back then there was no, suspensions or anything like that. So, but this guy was my nemesis, and he played in Quebec, and I was in Montreal at the time, and that was one of the biggest rivalries we had. Those brawls that were, those famous brawls we had, and every time something happened, I'm looking over my shoulder to see where he's coming from or if he's on the ice, and I had guys, that protected me, but every time I was on the ice without him, he didn't care. He's going to come after me. So Dale Hunter, without a doubt, and over the years, he got the best of me. And he, like I said, he was a good player too, but he crossed the line a lot with his stick. I would, they say hockey players, like if you run into each other in the bar afterwards, you're going to have a beer together. He's one guy. If I saw him or he saw me, we just turn and go the other way. So he was brutal.
Well, again, thanks, Chris, for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good. Take photos with you over here?
Yeah, pictures, autographs. Unfortunately, I didn't bring anything to sign, but yeah, pictures are. There you go. I got markers. I always have markers. So.
Over there.
Yeah, thank you.